To understand energy, we have to understand a little bit of physics as well. And so thermodynamics is just basically the study of energy and how energy behaves. And so the first law of thermodynamics, which you've probably heard of before, is that energy cannot be created or destroyed. You may have also heard this referred to as energy being conserved. This law is also called the law of conservation of energy. And what this means is that there is a finite or set amount of energy that exists in the universe. And there's no input of energy, so there's no extra energy coming into the universe. But we're also not losing energy as well. So we're not creating it, we're not destroying it, but we can transfer the energy from one molecule to another and from one form to another. And this is what happens during those chemical reactions of cellular respiration, where we're not creating energy and we're not destroying energy. We're just transferring that energy from the organic compounds to ATP. And then from ATP to whatever the cell needs that to happen. So it could be, it could be transferred to a pump or a muscle or something else. You've probably heard of something called a food chain or a food web. And this picture here is showing us a food web. So this is showing us a group of organisms and showing how basically they eat each other. And when you eat something, you're basically taking its biomass. And what that means is you're taking its molecules, so you're taking its atoms, but you're also taking its energy. And so when we eat something, our food gives us carbon and hydrogen and oxygen, but it also gives us energy. And so these food webs and these food chains are just showing this energy getting passed from one organism to another in the form of kind of juggling these different molecules and breaking bonds and making bonds. Now we talked about the first law of thermodynamics, which states that energy is neither created nor destroyed, but it can be passed around from organism to organism. And as we went through the reactions of cellular respiration, we talked about energy in the form of electrons getting passed between glucose and other carbon molecules and then getting transferred to NAD plus to make NADH, and then also getting transferred to ATP or ADP in order to make ATP. And so we talked about how those chemical reactions are basically just moving energy around in two different molecules. Now, the second law of thermodynamics is also really important as we talk about cellular respiration. And the second law of thermodynamics essentially states that these energy conversions are not 100% efficient, meaning that if you have, let's say, 10 units of energy and you're trying to transfer those 10 units of energy from glucose to, let's say, NAD+, not all 10 of those units are going to make the transfer successfully. So some of that energy is actually going to be lost in the process of being converted from one form to another. And in most cases, this energy is lost in the form of heat. So for example, we use the example before about putting gasoline into a car and how gasoline is basically just chemical energy, and the car is able to break those bonds in the energy to convert the potential energy to the kinetic energy of the car moving. Now, you've probably gotten out of a car after driving it for a while, and if you touch the hood, you'll notice that it's really hot. That's because as the potential energy in the gasoline gets converted to the kinetic energy of driving the car, some of the energy gets lost in the form of heat in that process. And you want to know what really stinks is about 90% of it gets lost as heat. So out of all that gasoline that you pay for and put into your car, only about 10% of it is successfully converted into a form that moves your car. The rest of it is lost as a waste product known as heat. Now, that sucks when it comes to your car, right? Because it seems like you're wasting money. But in humans, this is actually a really good thing. And that's because humans and other mammals are warm blooded, which means that we maintain a relatively stable internal body temperature even if it gets really cold outside. And you've probably noticed that or experienced that when you get really cold, you start to shiver. And what shivering is, it's just uncontrolled or involuntary skeletal muscle contractions. So what's happening is that your skeletal muscle is taking energy stored in the form of these organic compounds, converting that energy to ATP, which then gets converted to the contraction or the movement of the muscle. But in this case, the movement is actually kind of like the side product or the side effect, because what the shivering is ultimately trying to produce is that heat in order to warm you up. All right, so the second law of thermodynamics when it comes to living systems like humans is actually really beneficial because that heat can help to warm us up when we get too cold, which helps us to maintain our homeostatic body temperature.